One of the things that I wish we could always separate sometimes is how what may be going on personally impacts you when you're going into sales conversations. And you may have even heard the term like, it's not personal, it's just business. But one thing that I've learned over the years that a lot of times, even though it may just be business, it often feels very personal. I'm Dr. Nadia, founder of the Doyen Agency and creator of Straight Talk About Sales. And today's guest on the podcast is going to talk about how a life experience separate from her coaching and consulting business truly impacted the way she showed up in her business, and particularly how she showed up as it related to sales conversations. Kendra Tillman is the founder of StrongHer.me Coaching and Consulting, and she helps organizations invest in rising female leaders who need to own their leadership potential and reclaim their authentic voice when painful work experiences have shrunk their confidence. So if you're feeling like your confidence has been impacted, then definitely this is an episode you don't want to miss. Tune in. Welcome to another episode of Straight Talk About Sales. And I am so excited for today's guest, Kendra Tillman, founder of StrongHer.me Coaching and Consulting. Welcome, Kendra.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nadia. I'm
Oh my
excited.
goodness. I'm excited too, because I think today's conversation is really going to help a lot of people. But before we get into that, Kendra, tell us a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur and what has been that path that has led you to doing the work that you do now.
Okay, so I am, first of all, I just have to say this. I'm just so honored that you would ask me to be here, and especially because of what I know we're going to talk about. And that actually closely relates to how I started doing the work that I do. So, for those of you who are watching or listening right now, you may remember we had a little something happen in our economy back in 2007, 2008. That is when the real estate market crashed. My husband and I, we were heavily invested in real estate. We have always been very entrepreneurial. We were the people in college selling phone cards. We've done so many different multi-level marketing, business ideas, like just whatever we could do entrepreneurially, just with the hopes and the belief around building generational wealth. And so, of course, now enters the picture of real estate. We learn about real estate from reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by
Love
Robert
that book.
Kiyosaki, right? Everybody read that book. It was amazing. And it was very eye-opening and inspirational, especially like the way that we all grew up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just really inspired us to dream bigger and also to take more risk in the things that we were doing. And so, of course, we got caught up in the hype of all the things that were happening in real estate. And we just really overextended ourselves to the point where we had, when everything happened, it was financially devastating for us. Thankfully, we didn't have our personal residence involved, but we did have some rental properties involved. We had bought some land during that time. And so it was just financially, it was a really, really difficult time for us. It was a low point for us in a lot of different ways. And actually, that season that we went through in terms of the emotional healing, the spiritual healing, all the things that I needed to process and work through, that was actually what brought me to the work that I do now around empowering women to activate their authentic voice for their mission driven purpose and for their own self advocacy. Because during that season, whenever you've gone through some type of loss, any type of loss, so for us, it was financial, but for other people listening and watching, it may be something else. Anytime you go through loss, one of the experiences you might have is you might experience some shame. And with shame, one of the things that it does is it silences you and it keeps you from really telling your story. It keeps you from believing that anybody would want it. It basically makes you feel like you're disqualified from being able to do the things that you feel called to do. And so I definitely went through that. And so the journey that I went through, that journey of not only healing, but then also growing and also starting to believe again and rebuild my confidence that I could be successful in the things that I wanted to do is why I started doing the work that I do now around coaching women leaders, empowering them with tools and resources that really help them live a brave and authentic life. And so that's what brought me to the work that I do. And that's a lot of, I know what we're going to be talking about today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So one of the things that I love that you shared because it's so true and I see it a lot is how shame silences, right? And I've
Hmm.
had my own journey with things that have happened that have been
Hmm.
devastating and I was you're right. I was silent. I just kind of went to my little corner and cried and just kept it because I was like, I can't show up out in the world and have this voice while I'm dealing with this. And it's like, seriously, Nadia. But we do it all the time. And so
Yeah.
I really wanted to bring you on because not only did this incident what happened, and a lot went down in 2007, 2008. Trust me and my husband went through some stuff that year too. It's like I was in banking. So that's all I got to say in
Oh,
2008.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, firsthand.
Oh yeah, and we had packed up in 2008, moved across the country, got married, and boom, it was like, oh, okay, this is how we're gonna start our marriage out. Great. So, so yeah, I
Hmm.
totally get it. And but not only did this impact you guys financially and just your relationship with you and your husband,
Hmm.
but there were also some other relationships that were involved, and it was just a sticky financial, relational, icky time
Yes.
that, of course, now you're on a different path, but tell us a little bit about how you felt going through that, and then we'll talk about how that showed up in your work.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I put a high value on relationships. And I remember when we first decided that other people that we were friends with, that we were connected to through our church, that they were going to be involved in some of the projects and things that we were working on. I was like, because and so one of the conversations that we had with everybody is I would rather us not be in business together if it's gonna cost us relationships,
Same.
right? But of
Yep.
course, everybody's like, "No, don't worry. We understand you don't have control over these things," right? But that's very different.
Mhm.
When money gets involved, it gets very tense very fast.
Yes.
Yeah, especially I think too, if people also have some type of belief that maybe somehow you profited and they didn't,
Yeah.
you know, and so for us, basically what happened was we lost some of those relationships, even though we paid back every person that we had who had made any type of investment with us. We paid back all the money. We paid back all our debts. We paid off all our debts and everything. But we did lose some of those relationships in the process. And for me, I felt so embarrassed
Mhm.
because I really thought that what we were doing was the right thing. I
Mhm.
thought that the way that we did it, I thought that I know my husband was super diligent, like doing his due diligence and stuff. But now, of course, at this age, I can look
Right.
back and see some things that we could have done a lot differently, that we would have done differently. But yeah, that was the shame, the embarrassment that I felt, the disappointment, the disillusionment. I mean, I felt
Mhm.
every emotion. It was like every emotion you can feel, I felt it. That's negative. I felt all of that. And so, yeah, so that's what essentially happened as a result of the other people that were being involved. And I truly feel like, and maybe you can relate to this as well, is that it wouldn't have felt as hard if other people weren't involved because
Oh
I didn't
yeah.
wanna hurt other people. You know, it's one thing when your wound is self-inflicted, right?
Right, right.
It's a whole another thing when you inflicting wounds on other people.
Yes.
So that was honestly for me the hardest part, and also because I'm a woman of faith, I really felt let down. Like I felt let
Mhm.
down by my husband. I felt let down by God. You know, I really went into a victim mindset. Not saying that
Mm.
some of what I felt was not valid and normal that people
Mhm.
feel, because it is. But I really saw how I can see now, looking back, how much of a victim I felt to my circumstances, which I'm very grateful now that we are way on the other side of that. And
Hallelujah.
we'll probably talk more about that later. But yeah, so.
Yeah. So you have this going on in your personal life and,
Mhm,
somewhat business related, right? But it's
mhm,
outside of the work that you're doing with women and coaching and all of that. Like
mhm.
those things are very separate, air
Yeah.
quotes, separate.
Yes.
But like you said, you're feeling all of these
Mhm,
emotions. So when you start doing your work,
mhm.
working with women, and I know you've had various iterations, but
Yeah,
one of the things
sure.
you've been really consistent with is working with women, right?
Yes.
And you're having sales conversations with these women,
Mhm,
inviting them to work with you. How
mhm.
does all of that that's going on over here that's still brewing show up in those conversations?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Okay, so and let me kind of give you a little bit of a timeline.
Mhm.
So I was 10 years into marriage. So 2007, I was already 10 years into marriage. I hosted my first women's empowerment event in 2014. So between 2007, when all of this transpired, in 2014 is when I feel like I really stepped into where I knew I was on the path that God. But between 2007 and 2014, I was finding my way. Like I was trying to figure out, where is God taking me on this journey. And so in that time frame between 2007 and 2014, I was doing a lot of writing online.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna be honest, Dr. Nadia, I didn't really know how to make money. So I
Mm.
even remember a friend asking me, well, how do you make money doing this? Like, I see you doing all this writing. I see you putting out all these blogs. Because at the time I had a blog and I was doing like YouTube videos. And she was like, "How do you make money?" And I'm like, "I don't. I don't make money."
I'm just
Right?
doing things.
Yes, yes, I'm doing there's a certain business model that I'm trying to follow, not really understanding how do you make money doing this, right? And
Mhm.
so 2014 comes, I host my first women's empowerment event, and I will say, prior to that event, I really struggle with charging people for anything, because I had a mindset that, well, they can't afford it. And it's not fair for me to charge them. And, nobody will pay for this. I had all those types of beliefs mixed in together.
Yes.
And all of it was based in fear. So,
Mhm.
because one of the things that going through an experience like that, where for me, it was one of my nightmares, it was one of my worst dreams realized,
Mhm.
is that it put a seed of fear on the inside of me
Yeah.
about feeling rejected by people, and wanting to put something out there, but being afraid to take the risk of putting it out there.
Mhm.
And so I would say, in that window of time, that was where really what that was looking like for me in my business. It wasn't a business, it was a
Mm.
hobby. I thought it was a business, but it wasn't. And in all transparency, it has taken me a really, really, really long time,
Yeah.
um, to finally learn how to make money in business.
Wow. Wow. I can relate because I know the work that I do now, but I have
Mhm,
my own journey to get there. And I remember very similar, like, I don't know how to charge, or if I just say how amazing this is, you'll
mhm.
just ask me how you give
Yes,
me money, right? And no,
yes,
that never happened for me.
yes, yes.
That was never my testimony. And so, because I really, and one of the reasons why I invited you, Kendra, is because I know the work that you do and the impact
Mhm.
it has because I've worked with you personally. Like, I've hired Kendra to help me get myself together. But I also know that when you've had an experience like that,
Mhm.
it's very difficult, if not
Yes.
almost impossible, to show up in your day-to-day work, and
Yes.
especially building a business and
Mhm.
having sales conversations and
Mhm.
not have that running in the background, or
Mhm.
having that honestly be your mouthpiece, like you're speaking through that particular lens. So, what were some of the things that you did to overcome that, to not
Mhm.
have that be the lens that you looked at things through your business?
Well, I would say one of the things that I did was I really read a lot because that's part of who I am, is
Mhm.
someone who gathers a lot of information. I've learned over the years how to actually put action behind it and not just gather it. So I've read a lot of different things. So one of the books that I read probably in the last 6 or 7 years is a book called Overcoming Under Earning. Have you ever read that
Ooh,
book
I
before?
have not.
It's by the same person who wrote a book called, I think it's called The Six Figure Earner, for women or something like that. It's the same person who wrote that, but this book called Overcoming Under Earning, what it did was it really helps you address your fears around money, and the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And so one of the things that I have learned through reading is that there is a lot of stories that I had created in my own mind,
Mhm.
because of our experience. Also, let me just be real, because of the conditioning that I have gotten, as a Christian. Sometimes my
Mhm.
Christian faith, I think there's so much misunderstanding about money and how it works and how we use it and why we need it. And so, in my own attempt to be humble and modest, just like you mentioned before, it was causing me not to ask people for money,
Mhm.
like my services, to pay for my services that I have worked hard for, that I have learned how to provide something that is valuable to you, that
Right.
benefits you. So that's one thing, is the reading. I would say another thing is actually doing something that made me have to stretch and be uncomfortable, and that was hosting those events. So for 5
Yes.
years, I hosted women's empowerment events. And that was actually one of the things that truly broke the belief off of my mind that I shouldn't be asking people to pay for the work that I'm doing for them, because there would be things that I would want to do in terms of the experience that I wanted women
Mhm.
to have when they come to the event, but I couldn't do it because I didn't have enough money.
Right.
Right? Because guess what? All the people that I wanted to hire to help me create this beautiful experience for women, they needed money.
They
Like, they
charge
needed me to
money.
pay them, right? Right? My speakers, they needed money.
Mhm.
They needed
Yes.
money for this. And that was when it finally was like, oh, I need to charge people for this,
Yes. And
because
charge adequately.
yes,
Yes.
because I cannot even give people the kind of experience that I want them to have, because I'm not making enough money doing
Yep.
this. Um,
Exactly.
Another thing that I did was actually, like, one of your workshops. One of the number one thing that I remember from your workshop is you had us do this quiz, and it was basically like what type of, I don't know, if sales personality, your sales
Oh,
personality.
yeah, your blind spots. Yeah.
Blind spots, okay. And what I identified with was Dreaming Diane. I have
Oh,
told you
yeah.
this so many times, right? So Dreaming Diane is the person, like, I'm literally waiting for people to come to me.
Yes.
And I'm waiting for them to knock on my door, like, come to my address, my home in Phoenix, and be like, Kendra, we need you.
Yes.
Please help us, right?
Yes.
That's actually, like, that was what I was essentially doing. And what I realized, after I did your workshop, I remember reaching out to a woman that I saw had got this speaking opportunity, where she was going to travel to another state and she was going to teach, and I assumed they were going to pay her. And so I sent her a DM. And I just asked her, I said, how do you get opportunities like this? Right.
Mhm.
And she was like, I just went on their website. I saw they were looking for speakers and I applied for it. And I was like, you
You're like,
asked,
"Shocking."
you actually asked them. Okay. And that kept happening where more and more people I would talk to, and I would be like, how did they get this opportunity to speak here? And how did they, how did they book this client? And how did they get that? And it would be like, oh, we reached out to them and we said, hey, we have this thing that we're selling. Would you like to buy
Yes.
it?
And you were like, really?
What a concept, right? And I know, we're laughing and joking about, but I'm serious. I
Yes.
really didn't realize that I needed to be proactive. I could not just
Mhm.
expect people to know that I have something that they would actually want to pay for.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I remember when I first started as a coach way back in the day, and oh my gosh, I remember it so clear. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about being a coach because I get to serve women from my office in my yoga pants. I'm so excited. But similar to you, I could definitely relate to Dream and Diane too, because I was just like, if I build it, they will come. So I was spending all this time in my office. I got
Mhm.
business cards, I have a website, I had all this stuff and zero clients. So
Mhm.
$0 in my bank account, a whole hot
Mhm.
mess. And my vision was that these people were going to, you remember like when iPhone first came out a gajillion years ago,
Yes.
and people would line up around the Apple store,
Mhm.
spending the night to meet up. Right. That in my mind, that's what people were going to do for me, except
Yes.
virtually. And it just never happened. So similar to you, I
Mhm.
had a coach. She was like, Nadia, you're gonna have to reach out to people and see
Mhm.
if they would invite you to be a speaker, but you have to be proactive. You have to let them know that
Yeah.
you're available and what you talk about. And I was like, oh, I gotta put some elbow grease.
Yes. You gotta put in some sweat equity,
Yes,
okay?
yes, you really
Yeah.
do. But,
Yes.
and to tie it back, because you're right, we giggle and we can make light of it now, but trust me,
Mm.
when we were going through them
Amen,
seasons,
sister.
it was not a laughing matter. So we are definitely healed from that, right? But when you think about trying to build a business
Mhm.
under the shadow of shame and
Mm.
embarrassment and
Yes.
disappointment and hurt, it is really, really difficult.
Yes, it
And
is.
so, thank you for sharing like ways that you've come out of that because I know I've been there and I know many other women have been there and some may be there
Mhm.
now. So, we are just a testament that you can get beyond this. And
Yes.
I have a friend that I know. I'm trying not to give too much of his business away just because, to keep his identity completely
Right.
anonymous.
Yes.
But he bought a business
Mhm.
some years ago. He got a big loan. So, he went through our whole process and was one of
Mhm.
those rare people that got this
Mhm.
massive funding from like the SBA or somebody, right? And he
Mhm.
had a brick and mortar
Mhm.
business in an
Mhm.
industry similar to what went down in 2008. Things shifted and that just was no longer profitable
Mhm.
and he had to let that business go and deal with all the fallout because now not only your business not work, but you still like got the whoever breathing down
Yes.
your neck about they money, right?
Yes.
And I remember having a conversation with him one time. I don't even know how this came up. That was not the initial intent of our conversation,
Yes.
but he was just so removed. He
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily callous about it. Like he acknowledged, like, dude, this just didn't work out. I took a big risk. These are things that I did. It didn't work out. I'm having to deal with it. But it was fascinating to me because he didn't make it his identity. So
Yes.
while this didn't, he was able to separate his business failure from who he was as a person. So he didn't necessarily have the shame and he had employees. So, it did impact some people, maybe not as, because we tend
Mhm.
to be a lot more relational with our folks, right? But there were people who
Yes.
were impacted. If you have employees, they're impacted if the business shuts down, right? But
Mhm.
he was just one of my takeaways was his identity wasn't tied up in the fact that the business didn't work out the way he had hoped it would, and
Yes.
that he could start a new venture
Mhm.
and not carry the guilt and the shame. And not to say that when we talked, he hadn't gone through his own process, because like I said, I didn't get to ask him these kinds of questions, but
Mhm.
it was just really insightful for me having gone through something similar as you, Kendra, where I was just the shame, the embarrassment, like how can I even show my face? Like I didn't
Yes.
hear that from him. It was
Mhm.
I made him, things just didn't go right. I probably should have done some things differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, like I just felt like you owe so much money that I
Yes.
don't know how I would be able to function right now. And you
Yes.
are just like it is what it is, but I have other things to do. And so that was just such an eye opener for me.
Yeah, and you know what? When I hear you describe, what you saw in him, we are far more resilient than we actually realize and recognize. And even on your worst day, there is more in you than you think there is on the inside of you, right? I always say you are stronger than you think.
Yes. And
And
you even have a book and a
yes,
workbook.
yes, yes, yes. And that whole event that I started was around resilience
Yes.
because we have a capacity that far exceeds what we even know and what we even recognize. And God doesn't waste anything. He doesn't waste anything that we've been through, anything that we've gone through. He can take every single thing that feels painful, that
Mhm.
feels like you were never going to get to the other side of it. I literally remember one of the conversations I had with my husband is I was telling him how I was talking to one of my closest girlfriends when they were moving and they were about to buy another house. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if we'll ever be able to buy another house. And I remember the
Mm.
sadness that I felt thinking
Mhm.
about that because again, my husband and I, we don't come from a family of wealth, um,
Right.
and we have put in a lot of years and effort and time and energy and just everything that we know to do in order to be able to leave something to our children's children. And that was really the whole purpose behind us getting involved as entrepreneurs, is that we wanted to be able to leave this financial legacy. And we were in our first home when this all happened. And so I just felt like, man, we have messed up so bad that
Wow.
now we're never going to be able to own a home again. And my husband was like, I never thought that. He was like, no, he was like, I knew we were gonna recover. It was hard, it was difficult, it was a very low point. He was like, but I never thought that we wouldn't, get to, and I said, I in that moment, I really felt the sadness of it. What I have learned since then is that one of the things that helps you get to the other side of that is knowing that there is a strength on the inside of you that you have to lean on, you have to rely on, to help you continue to be able to move forward. And I know that we live in a culture now where people don't always like for you to talk about being strong because they feel like that means you also can't be vulnerable, but that's not at all what I'm saying. Um,
Right.
I also try to give people the analogy of strong like water, right?
Mhm.
Because water is a powerful force,
Oh,
right? I
yes, it
mean, think
is.
about floods and the
Mhm.
damage that water can do, but water is very flexible and it can move with with whatever is going on. And so when I say strong, that's what I mean. We have that power on the inside of us, but we
Yes.
also can be very flexible at the same time in terms of knowing that, hey, this is temporary. This is a temporary situation.
Yes, I love it. There is hope. There is
Yes,
a
there is
light.
hope. There is hope.
Is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. So it's funny because that's a perfect segue as you're talking about strength and being stronger than you think, because this is
Mhm,
the work that you do now with women and organizations and teams. You've
mhm.
done it with my team in terms of Colby and understanding our strengths. So tell us more about that work in particular that
Yeah.
you're doing. And I think you have a great gift. I invite everyone to take advantage of it that you're going
Yeah.
to share with us as well.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things when you asked me, how was I able to finally be able to move forward in my business, start to actually charge people
Yes.
things. One of the things that I've learned is about your strengths, leaning into your strengths. We have all been taught since we were children that there's things about us that we need to change, that need to be different, but we haven't always been taught what our strengths are. And
Mm.
I will tell you, a lot of times the things that you got in trouble for as a kid, they were your strengths. You
Yes,
just
they were.
right. You just didn't know how to harness them, right? You got to like I always say, you got to use your powers for good and not for evil.
I tell my mom now, I get paid to talk. I
Exactly.
stayed in trouble for talking too much.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. And so that's why for me, one of the biggest things that in the work that I do, that I put an emphasis around is women knowing what their strengths are
Yeah.
and leaning into those strengths, embracing what your strengths are. And one of the tools that I use in order to help you uncover your strengths and then to be able to leverage the strengths that you have. And if you have a team, also be able to leverage their strengths is a
Yes.
tool called the Colby Assessment. And the Colby Assessment has been around for over 40 years. Millions of people have taken it. And it is a tool that measures your instinctive strengths, your problem solving
Mm,
strengths. So when you are striving, you are taking action, you're trying to figure out a problem, how do you naturally take action? And what when you take the Colby assessment, what it does is it'll give you a report that not only lists your strengths, but something that I think that makes it different is it will tell you how to start to put that into action in your everyday life.
mhm.
And if you are part of a team, how do you look at the strengths of the other people on your team and then be able to say, okay, you have a strength in this area, I have a strength in that area. How can we bring these together to create this synergy for our entire team?
Yes.
And so that is the assessment that Dr. Nadia has taken. That's the one that her team members have taken. And I've done a team training for them. And so
Loved
now,
it.
yeah. So one of the things that I offer now is, if you're curious and you're interested, you can go to strongher.me/Colby, and Colby is spelled Kolbe mini session. So strongher.me/Colby mini session. And basically, what I'm offering is a complimentary 45-minute debrief where I walk you through the results of your report, a laser coaching session. So, whatever specific goals or a project or maybe something, a challenge that you're facing right now in your work or in your business,
Mm.
we can talk through that using your results to help you come up with an action plan of how you want to be able to move forward. And so the cost for that part of it is absolutely free. I'm not charging anything for that. All you need to do is make the $55 investment in the actual assessment itself. And so all the details in order for you to do that are at strongher.me/Colby mini session. It'll walk you step by step through everything you need to do to get that call set up.
Oh my gosh, and we'll make sure to have that link in our show notes, but
Yeah.
I encourage everyone to do it
Mhm.
because I had taken the Colby, I think back in 2014.
Mhm.
I went to an event, I don't know, I took the Colby, and so
Mhm.
I knew my numbers, but I didn't know what they meant, right? And I
Yes.
would hear
Yes.
this lingo that people would talk, "You're a quick start, you're this, you're that," and I was like, "Okay." But it wasn't until you and I had that one-on-one and you broke
Mhm.
it down and that was what, last year? Or
Yeah.
the
No,
year
I think it
before?
was 2021.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
7 years later,
Yes.
after taking it, I
Yes.
finally had someone
Mhm.
sit down with me one-on-one to help me understand what that
Mhm.
meant, and I was like, "Oh," and then again, we also did it with my team, so we got to see how we as a team, what our different strengths were, how we could work better together. I also got to uncover a hiring bias that Nadia has. I was like, ooh. So like that
Yes.
was insightful,
We
right?
all
So
do. We all do.
right,
Mhm.
we all have them. So she just helped me to see that. It's like, oopsie. And so I definitely encourage everyone. And, Kendra, what is one of the ways that Colby is different? Because I'm sure people are like, well, I know
Sure.
my disc or whatever, but how is Colby slightly different for some of the other assessments that we may have taken?
One of the things we always tell people about the Colby, it's complementary to other ones. So it's not like it's like if you've taken this or take the Colby and you don't need anything else, they actually complement each other because Colby is the only assessment that measures the part of your brain that
Mm,
measures how you take action. So the other ones measure your personality, they measure your preferences, what motivates you, what drives you, but Colby is the only one that actually measures when I give you a problem to solve. So you have some
mhm,
type of problem you're trying to solve in your business, or you have a project as a team that you're working on. How would you go about solving that? And so, what that does is helps you realize that maybe you're using a lot of your energy doing things in your business or in your work or in your personal life, because it's not just
mhm,
your professional life, but it's also your personal life. Maybe you're doing things that are draining your energy, and maybe there's someone around you that would be a better use of their energy if they were working on that. And so just looking at those two different things of your that part of your mind of how you take action and how you use your energy in a way that's more effective so you can be less stressed, you can have more energy for the work that you really want to be doing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
thank you, Kendra. Oh my
you for
goodness.
having
This is
me.
so
This went by
good.
so fast.
I know.
I'm like, you wrapping us up already?
We have so much that we can talk about.
Yes, yes.
We'll just have to bring you back for a part 2. That's all.
Okay,
That's it.
okay,
We'll just
that
bring you
sounds good.
back. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for being willing to be vulnerable. I think this is really going to help a lot of people understand that there is truly hope and light at the end of the tunnel.
All right. I hope so. That's what I'm hoping as I, when you like I said, when you sent me the email, I was so honored. And I'm like, anything that I can do to encourage another person, another woman to be able to believe that she is stronger than she thinks, I'm all for
Yes.
it.
Yes. Perfect way to end our this episode. You are stronger than you think. Thanks for
Yes.
joining us. We'll see you soon.